My name is Linda Cooper-Smith with CMIT Solutions of Stamford and Hartford, and I have Allison Cerise with me as well. And we're here to be able to talk a little bit about passwords today and some of the differences that really have gone on. So, right, we all know what a password is. But like many technology trends, there are different things that happen over time. So the first thing that I want to be able to focus on is that passwords right now, the key reason that so many cyber breaches occur is because of passwords. It's no longer about somebody hacking into your environment, but the vast, and it's almost 85% of the reason that cyber breaches occur is because of passwords and somebody being able to get a hold of your passwords. We know that we need passwords with the username, but it needs to be complex. We know that they need to be strong. We need to be able to do changes periodically, and there continues to be able to be some difference in regards to, whether, should we change passwords on a regular basis? Shouldn't we? And then a lot of people just think, I haven't had an incident, and so my passwords must be okay. And so we go ahead and get to a false sense of security about all of this. And of course, the password complexity aspects of this have changed over time, right? So it's no longer about being able to use just a couple words and a number and a symbol, but now it needs to be 14 characters long, and it needs to be able to have a capital and a small letter and a number sign and a special character. And so what has happened is that you either have to choose between something that you can remember, which means that you're going to end up reusing, or you've got something so complex that where in the world do you put it that's a safe area? So what happens with these passwords is that they get entered when you get a link inside of an email, and you unfortunately get tricked into being able to enter that password. You reuse them from place to place, so that's, a lot of times when we're going through a cyber incident, one of the questions we'll ask is, okay, did you enter in your password? Unfortunately, they say yes. I'm like, okay, do you use that password someplace else? And they're like, yeah. And then I say, so where do you store them? Oh, in my head. And that's really a recipe, for disaster. With all of the cyber breaches that have occurred over the years, the infamous dark web has this enormous database, and every single username that you could possibly think that you've had at this point is now correlated together. Right? Not 2 weeks goes by anymore before we hear of another breach. And at the very minimum, that breach has a username. It may also have a password, a social security number, an account number, and it just goes on and on and on. And within the dark web and hacker communities, these databases of credentials are sold. And they're sold very, very cheaply. You can get a couple thousand of them for $10. You can then download a little bit of a cyber script kiddie, and off you go, and you are now actually can start being able to do this. The other thing that happens is a lot of people share passwords. And unfortunately, as much as we want everybody to be able to have a unique password, the reality is that sometimes we have to be able to share them. So now all of a sudden you have to be able to do that. And how do you do that? Oh, you put it in a text. Well, text messages are sent across the internet in absolutely clear text, and you have no protection. So it's very easy for those to be able to come in, to be able to get captured. People send them an email. Well, email, if it's not encrypted, can also be attached. So there's no good way to be able to do this. So these are those best practices. But the problem is that we're humans, and the reality of being humans is we want to be able to do things in a very simple way. And we want to be able to be fast and productive, because these days you have to be able to log on to more and more and more different websites. And so people will continue to be able to use that path of least resistance because they just want to be able to get things done quickly. I think that's even more so maybe sometimes in the Northeast where we're just, absolutely needing to be able to do that. And so the shift from a cybersecurity perspective has gone to identity. So it's no longer about protecting a network, but what we now need to be able to protect is the identity. And it is, the passwords, the biometric, and these types of those aspects. And so this is where the real shift happens. So yes, we want to be able to continue to be able to protect our networks and our machines because that's where the low-hanging fruit is. That's where the really introductory hackers will be able to go after all of those known things. But the more sophisticated ones, we really now need to be looking at those passwords and being able to say, how do we truly identify that person? And so what we now add in and need to is some additional safeguards to just a password. And so it is multi-factor authentication. It is a biometric, ideally. It is a code that gets sent to your phone where you need to be able to push. And the other big thing is to be able to put in place password managers. And so password managers, and there's several of them out there, we have standardized on a product called Bitwarden. And instead of having to remember them or have them so complex, they go inside of the password vault in order to be able to be stored. And what's really great about these is that it automatically can store your MFA. It can store now a passcode, and that's a whole nother concept that we can talk about on a future way, but it also automatically creates that complexity. So the complexity is also very important. So you go into a password vault and you don't have to be able to think of it, but it's fast to be able to, get that complex password and then being able to go out there. It automatically stores it in your password vault and goes and automatically does a paste into your browser and all of your different websites. And it also gives you an ability to be able to share a password on a safe basis. So we have a number of clients that need to be able to do that sharing. And even Allison and I have to do that for marketing purposes and this and that and all kinds of different things. And what you also get with being able to have an easy to use solution like that is you get time back in your day and you get a lower level of stress. I have an office colleague that I often hear just have a meltdown, get frustrated and everything else. Why? Because the password doesn't work. And now you have to be able to go through the whole forgot password rigmarole, or you have to be able to call your IT company or your admin to be able to get your password changed because you can't remember it. And so that password vault becomes your memory. And so there's just an awful lot of great things to be able to put in there. So it really adds an awful lot of not only safety, but productivity. And then lastly, from a compliance standpoint, if you need to be able to make sure that your company is handling all of this on an appropriate basis, you can use a password manager and be able to make sure that your employees are not reusing passwords and using short ones and being able to have them inside of a Word file and an Excel file, because they need to be even more maybe productive than you are with all of this. So what we're really recommending is that you pick up some kind of a password manager, obviously, and we're here to be able to help you with that. So we would welcome the opportunity to be able to have you schedule a short, no obligation conversation so that we can help you understand what kind of password practices and policies you should have, help you be able to identify what are the kinds of habits in your organization that you need to be able to get in front of and be able to create some really easy wins with this risk. So, we will outline an overall solution for you, as well as we have different implementation tiers. We know that everybody kind of works at different levels. So we have, here we can give you all of the items, do it yourself, and really a complete turnkey kind of a solution for you. And they're really, really inexpensive as well. So at this point, I'd like to be able to see whether we've got any questions, Allison.
We do have a few questions here. The first one is, if multiple people need access to the same account, how do we do it safely without just sharing the password?
There you go. That's wonderful. So many of the password managers have the concept of being able to say, I'm going to share the password or I'm going to put it into a shared folder. So think of it in terms of your own files. You have files that you share at a company level, and you have passwords that are your own. And so we have shared folders as well as individuals. And then what happens is that folder, that password appears in their password vault, and then you're able to readily be able to take it and paste it. What's also nice about a lot of the shared password solutions that are there is you don't necessarily have to expose the actual password to the person that you're sharing it with. So if you do have to share, for example, the password to your bank account with your bookkeeper so that they can download your statements and do your bank reconciliation, you can do that through a password vault, but it's completely starred out. They copy it, it pastes, but they can't see what it is, so that they can't write it down on a piece of paper and then lose it and somebody else be able to go on there. Next
We do
question.
we do have a few more questions here. What is the difference between Bitwarden and LastPass?
Two different solutions, both of them very reputable, both of them widely used. They do have a number of similar kinds of things. LastPass a while back did have a password breach. And so increasingly, as we look at software development and vendors, we become more and more comfortable with companies that are being transparent about what they're doing for security. So when I'm doing due diligence on a vendor, especially one that is in the security area, what I want to be able to hear is that they're doing an internal penetration test and they're rotating between 3 different vendors. And if I ask them, what were your high risk problems that were found on the last, penetration test, they'll be open and honest and have that information and actively see that you're working on it. Because that's reality. There will always be something that's going on. LastPass is not as transparent as other ones, so it really comes down to having a greater comfort in Bitwarden at this point than we do with LastPass. The other thing that comes into play is that we have had over time several clients say to us, oh my goodness, what happens if I lose my master password? With many of these password vaults, you're hosed. There's absolutely nothing that you can do. If we set up the account for you through password, we can have a situation where we can change that password if you need to. So that does require an awful lot of authentication, and we actually put a document in place that say we will only do this, from an authorized person.
Oh, and from the same user, if I change from LastPass to Bitwarden, can I import my data?
Yes, there is a straightforward way of being able to export your information from LastPass, bring it into Bitwarden. What it nicely does is also put it into folders that are labeled as kind of from LastPass, so that as you're, now creating new ones, you can either reuse those same folder names or have the opportunity to create new ones.
That's good. Next question. If someone leaves our team, does this make it easy to remove access?
It certainly does. You now have a clear list of every single system that you need to be able to go through to be able to do that. And so, for example, the recommendation that we have is that all employees keep all passwords in a password vault. And so, that is what they do. So now when that employee leaves you, all you need to be able to do is lock down their password vault, and now they don't have access to any of their passwords. Furthermore, you have a complete list of every single website that they had a username and password, and you now have that checklist of being able to go into each one of those systems to be able to change it. If it's a shared password, well, now that's one of the reasons you would use not being able to have them see it, and then being able to go ahead and they won't have access to it once they lose access to their vault.
And last question, how hard is this to actually set up and get everyone using it?
That's a really good question. Password vaults have become very deep in functionality. So you can start off with the absolute basics yourself and doesn't need a whole lot of hand holding. You go ahead, you sign up for the vault. Oftentimes there's even a free version to be able to start off with. So if you're just using this for your own purposes, you can very much do it yourself on this. If, however, you're rolling this out on an organizational basis, you now have the opportunity to be able to create password policies that are actually a part of the vault. And so the vault then says, no, you can't have one that's 6 characters long and, has repeating characters. So at that time, it's better to be able to get somebody that is really trained on doing the implementation work and also being able to handhold people. So the other things that do come in is people oftentimes now want the password vault not only as you put it usually as an extension onto your browser, but now it needs to be in multiple browsers, and now there's a desktop version, and how do I get it onto my phone? And so all of that can be, of course, be completely automated if you're working with an IT provider. So there are definitely, simple, you can, do the absolute basics on yourself. But if you want some of that more advanced functionality, you then bring in a professional to do that.
Okay. That seems to be all the questions we have. If I missed your question or if you have any additional questions, please go ahead and drop those into the chat for us. And we
So
will
Allison, what's this QR code do for everybody?
So that QR code will take you directly to Linda's booking page, so you can book a consultation to see how to set it up and what we would recommend specifically for your organization rather than this overall policy for the general public.
All righty. Well, with that, we will go ahead and close off, and I look forward to being able to see some appointments pop up and would love to be able to help you implement a password manager vault solution for your company. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.